am just a simple man, trying hard to understand. Where's my place in your great plan? Oh Lord, help this man. Lord, I am just a...
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على الرسول الصادق الأمين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, welcome to a new live episode of our program, One Step Closer. One Step Closer, as we said, my dear brothers and sisters, in every other episode is a program where we take one step closer, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, every single night to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One step closer to Jannah, our ultimate goal, inshaAllah. SubhanAllah, alhamdulillah, I'm very happy by your responses after last night's episode about relatives. The episode was called Relatively Speaking. We were talking about the importance of staying in touch with our relatives and establishing relations with our relatives. And alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, I'm so happy to see so many people telling me that they are starting to establish this great relationship with their relatives, inshaAllah. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, my dear brothers and sisters, we're switching gears tonight, and I'm joined by a very, very, very special guest in this episode, inshaAllah, as we talk about another subject, another way of getting a step closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as I tell you every time, it's really a leap closer to Jannah, not simply a simple step. So, inshaAllah, my dear brothers and sisters, without further ado, the topic of tonight's episode is called Good Business. And I'm joined tonight by my very special guest, Sheikh Ibrahim Zidane. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's a great honor, a great pleasure to have you with us live in Ramadan, mashallah.
It's always my honor and pleasure. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it a blessed Ramadan, inshallah.
Ameen, ameen, barakallahu feek. My dear brothers and sisters, please, we're going to make this program tonight, inshallah, an extended discussion segment. So for the entire hour, the phone lines are going to be open, so give us a call, inshallah, at 002-0238-555, 248 or 249, inshallah. Again, the number is 002-0238-555, 248 or 249. And of course, for free through Skype at Huda_TV. Huda_TV, inshallah. And ask us your questions related to zakah, related to sadaqah, and of course, please share with us your thoughts about the idea of spending for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and helping those most in need. Shaykh Ibrahim, I want to begin by asking you the great status of a person who spends in the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We live in such a material world right now where basically what we want to do is possess and take more. And honestly, to be honest, a lot of people work very hard for it. So the dollar that they earn is really a hard-earned dollar. So it's very hard for us to let go of that dollar to someone else. And then we have people in society who tell us, you know what, it's not really your fault that someone else is poor, it's their fault. They're the lazy person. Your thoughts?
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulullah. Spending, or nafaqah, spending for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is such a very high status in the deen of Islam. It's not just a good deed, any good deed. It's something that is related to the foundation of the deen. And that is basically iman and faith. And that's why we would find many verses in the Quran that talks about spending. The Prophet ﷺ called it an evidence to one's iman. وَالصَّدَقَةُ بُرْهَانٌ. So if a person saying, I'm a believer, I'm a good person, what is your evidence? The evidence is that you have to give for the sake of Allah. To take away from the nature of the greediness of the human being. We're all greedy. So unless you choose to be otherwise for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. So that's why charity or giving as a concept in the deen of Islam is not just about giving some cash money to someone. It's our whole entire life as Muslims. We are giving from our time, our wealth, our health, all of that for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Even a smile is a sadaqah.
Na'am, as the Prophet ﷺ said. So we have to change the way that we see things, that our life is basically about giving, and you would never lose, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised those who would give that they would never lose. So when people say something, we see that in the Quran all the time, they said, or they say.
Yes.
But let them say. We need to make sure that we focus on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. And we put the trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and have good expectations of Allah, that definitely you would find the outcome is a great one. But we need to be tested. with this point of greediness that is present in us.
The word sadaqah, I heard, I'm not sure if this is true, you can tell me, it really comes from the verb sadaqa, which means to be truthful, right? So that's where the origin of sadaqah comes from. Is that true?
Right, that's true, because this is the truthfulness of one's faith, that a person really is truthfully believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and as a result of that he would give what he earns and what he been entrusted with. Because one of the basic concepts of sadaqah in Islam, we would find many verses in the Quran, وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, from what we had provided for them. The disbelievers, they don't believe that way, but for the believers, they believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that bestowed on us His favors. So we are basically entrusted. The wealth, yes, it's ours, but we have been entrusted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because He's the owner of all things. And after we die, we leave it behind anyway.
And we don't take it with us. Well, some people say smiling is a charity, alhamdulillah, so I'm smiling.
Alhamdulillah.
That's it.
MashaAllah.
That's it. I'm not going to do anything more.
Right. This is an easy way, mashallah. So that's why if a person is capable of doing anything, don't be greedy even with something that is so simple. But it doesn't mean that if a person has the means to give from all forms of giving, a person should give, because again we have to witness first that we have been given something, whether it's wealth, health, or whatever means we have. It's given for a reason, for a wisdom. And the wisdom behind it is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through these bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if we have the means to move our lips and smile and so on, mashallah, this is great. If we have given money the same way. If we talk about the verses and the hadith of the Prophet _sallam, especially with Ramadan, there's a very special hadith where the Prophet _sallam كان أجود الناس, as the hadith of in Sahih al-Bukhari. He was the most generous person, عليه الصلاة والسلام. وكان أجود ما يكون في رمضان, and he is more generous in Ramadan, especially when Jibreel would come to him and he would study with him the Quran, recite with him the Quran. فلرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أجود من الريح المرسلة, that the Prophet ﷺ is more generous than the flowing or the blowing wind, without thinking of any outcome or consequences of things of that nature. But the word ajwad, the jud, the generosity, is far more greater than just $1 or money or this. It's the whole entire life of the Prophet ﷺ.
There's a very famous, obviously wrong understanding within some people, and in some cultures it's actually a saying. It says that whatever the house needs is haram for the masjid.
Right. We have this actually in our culture.
Yes.
People say that, and it's a very wrong statement. You know,
it's not a hadith, are you sure?
There's no hadith. It's not a statement from any of the early generations of Islam or anything. The Muslim, he looks at the house and the masjid and the whole entire world as places where a person can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Definitely there are obligations. If a person's house this is an obligation to spend on one's household. And this is one of the concepts you would find disbelievers, they spend on their households, but they don't get rewards for it. For us as Muslims, spending on the wife, on the children, this is an obligatory spending. And that's the most rewardable act of charity. That's by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a person deceiving his family, this is a major sin, of course. But spending on the family, spending on the masjid, spending on the Muslim ummah, there's no difference between one or the other. And the closer the person is to us, he should have an effect when it comes to charity, the poor, those who are close to us, than those who are far away, and so on. Now,
the reward of a person who spends for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the hadith of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
When there's so many verses and so many hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
And that in itself shows that there's such an important subject, that there are so many ayat and so many hadith talking
about. Without the specific rewards that are mentioned, like multiplication of 10 to 700 and so on, there is enough for us, the hadith, which you said in the beginning. The title of the episode is Good Business. إن الله اشترى من المؤمنين أنفسهم وأموالهم بأن لهم الجنة. This is such a beautiful meaning, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purchased the lives and the wealth of the believers. That means that what is more rewardable for the believers, what is more that makes them enticed to do good deeds better than this? If they have the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how can a person be honored more than to hear this, that Allah purchased the lives and the wealth of the believers? They would be given in return the Jannah. So this by itself is enough. Then when it comes to the physical reward, if a person give half a date, as the Prophet ﷺ said in the meaning of the hadith, half a date can be the reason for the person to be shielded from the hellfire. We're talking about getting closer to Jannah.
Yes.
But if a person is saved from the hellfire, that means he's among the people of Jannah. فَمَنْ زُحْزِحَ عَنِ النَّارِ وَأُدْخِلَ الْجَنَّةِ Whoever is pushed away from hellfire and enters Jannah, he is the winner by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So half a piece of date, if it's done by the sincerity and given it for the sake of Allah, this can save the person from the hellfire. So earning from halal and spending, whatever a person spends for the sake of Allah, this is a great thing. But when it comes to the verses, there's a beautiful hadith. When we talk about charity, we don't want to be like you give some money and that's it.
Yes.
You become actually, you articulate in giving charities.
SubhanAllah.
There's a hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, Bukhari,
Yes.
where he said, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man anfaqa zawjayn fi sabilillah nudiya min abwab al-jannati ya abdallah hadha khair." That whoever spends zawjayn, two forms of charity for the sake of Allah, he will be called by the gates of Jannah, Ya Abdullah, O slave of Allah, this is good. فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْ أَهْلِ الصَّلَاةِ نُودِيَ مِنْ بَابِ الصَّلَاةِ Whoever from the people of the Salah will be called from the gate of Salah. Those who from the people of fasting, they will be called from the gate of Rayyan. Those who are from the people of Jihad, they will be called from the gate of Jihad. Those who are the people of charity, they will be called from the gate of charity. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, when he said, O Prophet of Allah, if anybody is called from any of these gates, this is great enough. Would anybody would be called from all of these gates? The Prophet ﷺ said, yes, and I hope and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you are one of them, O Abu Bakr, and you will be one of them, O Abu Bakr. So the point is to give two things, as the ulama they say, two forms of wealth, two forms of like food and money, for example, or two horses, or things like this. Not just to give and that's it, but to give even in a more beautiful way to help those who are needy and so on.
Jazakallah khair, barakallah feek. Sister Zainab from the UAE, Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa
How are you, Brother Ossama?
Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alamin. Doing very well, barakallah feek.
I just joined in and I just wanted to say salam and Ramadan Kareem to all of you.
Same to you,
and the topic sadaqat, may Allah help us to find more creative and nice ways to do sadaqah in His Fisabilillah. So one thing I just want to discuss with the Sheikh is that if I, like for my income, if I keep recording the sadaqah, like if I decided 5% of my income I will give as sadaqah every month. And if I record it, I count it that I fulfill that limit, is it okay? Because then I'll feel that it's not good to record or write your sadaqahs or count your sadaqahs, things like that. I hope you are getting my point, what I'm trying to say.
MashaAllah, beautiful question. Inshallah, we'll answer it.
And second,
yes.
One other thing, just if you can elaborate in today's time, the sadaqah jariyah we can do easily, from day to day.
Beautiful question. Barakallahu feek, Sister Zainab. Jazakallah khairan. The first thing she's asking about, I love, subhanAllah, how people are so creative. They think of creative ideas. You were saying articulation, and she's doing one type of creativity. She's, for example, she's donating 5% of her monthly income. She's recording that. Of course, we know that, inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept, the malaika are recording it. Right. But her physical act of recording it, is that wrong in any sense?
No, there's nothing wrong as long as there's no such a thing of showing off the action, even after a person passes away. If a person dies, you don't want to leave anything or something that can bring some form in the heart of showing off the deed. So if there's a reason, there's a wisdom behind it, mashallah, this is a great thing. But just to be careful with, from the issue of showing off maybe or something like this. But to remember, to make sure that you pay your zakat, whatever, this is something great, mashallah.
Inshallah. We'll talk about the idea of sadaqah jariyah in just a moment, inshallah. And let me remind you, my dear brothers and sisters, of our phone numbers, 002-0238-555, 248 or 249. And Skype, Huda_TV, inshallah. Give us a call at any time during this extended discussion segment, inshallah, and share with us your thoughts and your comments, your ideas for charity, your creative ideas, inshallah. Also ask us your questions about zakat, about sadaqah and anything related to the topic tonight, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Shaykh Ibrahim, I want to tell you a story that happened to me regarding sadaqah. It's not me who did it, but something that happened to me. So I was at one of the masajid in the United States. I was giving a talk, and it was about the hadith relating to the subject of our beloved Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, where he says that every single day that comes, two angels will descend. One of them will say, Allahumma a'ti munfiqan khalafa. And the other one will say, Allahumma a'ti mumsikan talafa. The first one, two angels will come down every single day of the year, every single day since earth has been created, that two angels will come down. One of them will say, Oh Allah, give the person who spends something, as a reward for him, for whatever he spent. And then another angel will say, Oh Allah, give the person who held back and did not spend destruction, or some sort of damage in his life. So and I said the hadith, and I emphasized on the point that every single day of our lives this happens. So after I was done with the lecture, a brother came to me. I think this brother was from Bangladesh, and he gave me a check. And he said, please don't open it until I leave. And he said, this is a check for the masjid, in the name of the masjid that I was at the time. And I said, okay, jazakallah khair. So I open up the envelope, and I look at the check right after he left. And I see the check is for $365. Subhanallah. $365. $1 for each day for the entire coming up year. So subhanAllah, such a beautiful way to articulate and to think of charity. This brother wanted to make sure that inshallah for the next year, for the next 365 days, that inshallah every time the angels will come, he made that intention that $1 per day, $1 per day, because this is what he can afford.
What we need to develop in ourselves. When we talk about charity, we think of the rich people. And we'd find many of the viewers, the topic is for someone else.
Yes.
I'm already, I have my ends meet and all kinds of things like this. This is like salah and fasting and all the different acts of worship. We need to have every day some form of charity that we give. $1, something very small, something, maybe $1 is big to some people in certain countries, but anything you give, half a piece a day, anything that a person can give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on daily basis, this is a way to purify ourselves and to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and means for us to enter the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should not deprive ourselves from giving for the sake of Allah. It's not just for the rich, for the poor and the rich and every Muslim, to give for the sake of Allah.
Jazakallah khair. Brother Ahmed from Qatar, Assalamu alaikum. Brother Ahmed, Assalamu alaikum.
What? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Go ahead, Akhi.
Oh, nice to talk to you both.
Same here, Akhi. Go ahead.
Yes, I kind of got two questions to ask. As we know that it's the niyyah that counts while giving charity, but is it okay to show others our charitable deed so that it would encourage them to do the same thing?
Great question, mashallah. What's the second
I've
question?
got one more question. Yeah, second question is kind of not related to the topic.
Okay, go ahead, no problem.
Yes, as Allah says in Surah Ma'idah that al-yawma hilla lakum al-tayyibat wa ta'amu alladhina utul kitaba hillun lakum wa ta'amukum hillun lakum. So is it okay that we can eat the food that Jews and Christians give us today?
Jazakallah
Is it
khair.
halal for us?
Barakallah feek. We'll answer you, inshallah. Spending for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you said to Sister Zainab, we shouldn't leave a trail behind when she was recording it. But are there certain instances where spending in public is actually more rewardable than spending in private?
Yes, if there's a benefit that will be the outcome of it. That's why the ulama, they separate between the obligatory charity and the optional charity. The obligatory charity, zakah for example, everybody has to, those who are entitled for zakah, they would give the zakah. So some said that it's good to be done openly, in some cases of course, so that would encourage people to give also their zakah money. And also even if it's an optional charity, for someone to encourage others. Everybody is withholding and not doing anything. And people are called to give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like it happened at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when a person came with the sack of whatever he has and he put it in front of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, people saw that and they followed the same way. And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned the famous hadith, "Man sanna fil Islami sunnatan hasana." Whoever do something in the religion of Islam that is good, he will get the reward of it and the reward of the people, those who did the same. So he encouraged the people. He did that openly. The hypocrites, when they saw that, they said that he is showing off. So that as long as the heart of the believer is settled, and he's doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if there's a reason and a benefit to show it off, definitely is good. But the original status of any good deed, if you can, is to keep it always secretive as much as you can, unless there's a benefit. As a person might say, for example, I like to pray at home, the fard prayer, because I have more khushu'. I don't want to show off my salat to people. This is wrong, because the way the Prophet ﷺ that he used to pray in the masjid. So you work on yourself to be sincere, and you follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is definitely a good thing.
His second question is a little bit off topic, but I think if we can answer it quickly, inshallah. Eating from the food that's offered to us by the Jews and the Christians.
The ayah says that as long as the food is halal for us. So if they slaughter, they don't choke the animal or anything like that, then it's permissible for us to eat.
Even if they don't mention the name of Allah?
If they there's a difference opinion when it comes to mentioning the name of Allah. If you know for sure that they don't mention the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you're asking me, never eat. If you know for sure that they didn't say Bismillah. So they slaughtered, and you know for sure that they said, or actually you know for sure that they didn't say. We don't have to ask. But for example, the Jews, they say something of that nature, then it's okay to eat. But if they don't, then to stay away from it. Allahu A'lam.
SubhanAllah, there's a beautiful ayah in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You will not achieve righteousness or piety or good reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unless you spend from that which you love. Not spending, SubhanAllah, not spending maybe like the worst money that you have in your pocket, or just a few cents here and there if you're capable of spending more, or donating only your old clothes when you are able to give something better for the needy. Can you explain to us this ayah and maybe give us an example from the seerah relating to the ayah?
See, the verse when it starts with negating something, that means what comes after that is very exclusive. You would never attain righteousness or piety. And the believers definitely, they want to be the most righteous. So you would never attain it in the perfect sense till you spend from what you love. Again, we have this greediness in each and every one of us. So unless we give from what we love, and this is such a beautiful thing, it needs a lot of patience. Needs ihtisab, for a person to seek rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to give something that you love for your own self, but you give it for the sake of Allah. Definitely that will bring what we seek is to be righteous and to be pious. It's not that we would make a decision, I want to be pious, and that's it, the next day I'm a pious man. We have to do some effort. We have to do something, especially a verse like that. It's an easy way. It's an easy way, definitely. The act itself is difficult on one's self, right? But it's an easy way to be righteous and to be pious, is to give from our wealth and our time. There's the famous story of Abu Dahdah and others. When the verses like that revealed, they come to the Prophet ﷺ, the best of my wealth is the garden that has 600 palm trees. In an environment for those who went to Mecca and Medina, when one piece of date is a great thing. He gave it all for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Did he lose anything? Definitely not. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he stood by the body of Abu Dahdah, when he was martyred in the Battle of Uhud, he said, كَم مِّنْ عِذْخٍ رَدَّحٍ الْأَنْ أَبِي الدَّوْدَحِ. How many palm trees now are for Abu Dahdah in Jannah? Abu Dahdah in Jannah. So it's not about, we have to look of just not the outcome of this dunya, but the hereafter. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. Never a person would give for the sake of Allah, and it turns that he becomes in poverty and misery. There's no way. And we can challenge people, give us an example of somebody gave something for the sake of Allah, and it turned out to be a miserable life for him. There's no way.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward the person in this life and the next also as well.
Of course.
SubhanAllah. Jazakallah khairan. My dear brothers and sisters, we're going to take a short break, inshallah. When we come back, we're going to continue our discussion about spending for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we'll take more of your phone calls through our phone lines and Skype, so please stay with us, inshallah.
Lord, I am just a simple man, trying hard to understand.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome, dear viewers from around the world, to our exciting program titled Good Answer. I'm your host Malik, and I'm joined by the Imam of America, the founder of Guide Us TV. He needs no further introduction. I think you know who I'm talking about, Sheikh Yusuf Estes. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Yusuf.
Assalamu alaikum, Malik.
My name is Ayman, and I think a lot of people would like to know, a lot of non-Muslims would like to know who Prophet Muhammad was.
We worship the God that he worshipped. And we worship that God the way he worshipped. So we consider Islam to be a way or a deen.
Right.
Anywhere. Anywhere. But that had never been before. He said this is a gift. Never came before that me and my followers, we can make our salah, our connection anywhere.
Hey, Sheikh, you're on the hot seat. I like my seat over here. I'm feeling comfortable because he asked you a tough question. He asked you a good question. Can you give him a good answer?
Islam my deen, Allah my Lord, His word Quran.
Or did not connect you to Allah, so you do not actually practice other good deeds in consequence. What is the reason behind it? Because sometimes you may make a good and righteous deed to power, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees thousands of necks from the hellfire. Did you think one day that you will be one of those people that Allah has destined to be freed from the hellfire?
The Prophet ﷺ, that in the last, immediately before the last day, that all the blessings will be taken out of time. So the whole year will pass just like a month, and the month will pass just like a week, and the week will pass just like a night.
You believe, give charity for the pleasure of Allah, the pleasure of Allah. Lord, I am just a simple man trying hard to.
Welcome back, my dear brothers and sisters. Thank you very much for being with us in this segment, inshallah ta'ala. SubhanAllah, I was just listening to the break right before us, and the nasheed that was on Sheikh Muhammad Saeed's program about Ramadan reminders was talking about charity. So see how we got things syncing up, mashallah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Before the break, Sister Zainab was asking about a special type of charity called as-sadaqatul jariyah. Continuous sadaqah or ongoing sadaqah. What are some examples of that?
Anything that is not terminated by the death of the person, or even before that, anything that is just not one benefit at one shot and that's it, it's considered to be a sadaqah jari, something that is continuous. Having a well, digging a well, for example, for people to drink water. Every time somebody drinks from that water, the reward goes for the person that did and spent and dug and so on, and the same thing is for whoever maintain it and so on. A masjid, for example, this is one of the very beautiful ways of having sadaqah jari. Building a masjid or having any share in building the foundation or the walls of the masjid or anything, anybody that will praise in the masjid, the reward also goes to the person that helped in building the masjid. And the Prophet ﷺ said in the famous hadith, من بنى لله مسجدا ولو كمفحص قطعة, which means whoever builds a house of Allah, even as small as the nest of a bird, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will build for that person a house in Jannah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most generous and He is the most merciful subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for example, hospitals, knowledge to be spread. And that's also one of the most virtuous continuous charity, because it is extended from one generation to the other. You teach someone, you have to gain the knowledge, and you teach someone something. That person grows up, or he's grown up, and he teaches it to others, and it goes from one generation to the other. Each generation that comes before that taught and had the means of teaching, they get the same reward. So you can imagine the rewards of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, the rewards of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's why this is a great opportunities. And on the other side, the real successful person is the one that when he dies, his sins dies with him, because there's continuous sins also. So we have to be very alert, basically. Death comes in no time, and a person when he dies, he would regret that he didn't put something forward Life can be 60, 70, 20 years, or can be in reality, according to the good deeds and bad deeds, to a person thousands of
and
years.
millions of years.
No.
Yes.
So why waste our life when our life is short? No.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Well, let's switch gears to the obligation of zakat. Okay, and let me take advantage that you're with us here to remind our brothers and sisters about this great obligation. In very simple terms, remind us, for especially this program, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, is watched by a lot of youth who may not have the obligation of zakat on them yet. So remind us, what is zakat, if we can put it that way, and is there a connection between giving our zakat and being in the month of Ramadan?
No. Zakat is one of the pillars of Islam. And it's so beautifully, the word is being mentioned as purification. It's a way to purify our wealth and purify our souls when we give the obligatory charity. And it's something so minimum, as we know. It depends on the type of wealth that a person has. But when it comes to money, for example, which is based on gold and silver, it's 2.5% of one's saved money that passes a whole year, lunar year, and he didn't spend. So it's not from the income of the person or anything like that. If a person makes $1 million and spends $1 million, there's no obligatory zakah. But if a person keeps what's the minimum or more, which is 70 grams of gold, then a person would give for every $1,000, $25. And of course, with the different types of wealth, the amount of zakah to be given, it's an extended, of course, fiqh issue. But some people, or a lot of people, they give their zakah in Ramadan for many reasons. One of which it's easy to remember, because we cannot give zakah based on a Gregorian calendar, for example. It has to be through the lunar calendar. So people, unfortunately, they don't remember anything but Ramadan, right?
Many of us don't memorize the Islamic months,
which is a very sad thing. And Muslims should make sure that this is how they know how to fast and how to do many good deeds. The other thing is because Ramadan is a virtuous month, and people think that giving zakah in the month of Ramadan is a rewardable thing, which is, mashallah, is good. But what happens to the poor throughout the rest of the year? If they just receive all the kinds of goodness in the month of Ramadan, who will take care of them the rest of the year? So it doesn't have to be in the month of Ramadan. Some of the early generations of Islam, they used to give their zakah in Sha'ban, because this is the month where the deeds are being presented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they start the month of Ramadan when they paid their dues. A fresh start in the month of Ramadan. So, mashallah, this is no problem for a person to give in Ramadan. In many parts of the world, it's the easiest mean to give charity. The masajid, they take the money from the people, they spend it, they spread it to the Muslims and so on. So it depends on every case, but it's a good thing, mashallah.
MashaAllah. Some people say, well, why should I pay zakah? I already pay taxes. Why should I pay zakah?
Right. This is definitely, taxes is something else. Zakah is the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I heard this actually many times. People think that as long as they gave something, that's it. No, zakah is an act of worship.
And they say, you know what, when it comes to taxes, I already pay like 25% of my income. And you're talking to me about 2.5% of my income?
And that's the mercy of Allah. See how easy the matter is. Plus, the people, those who are subject to receive the zakah, it's not any form of charity. It's certain categories mentioned in Surah At-Tawbah, 8 categories only of people. You cannot give your zakah to build a hospital, for example. You cannot do that. It's a good deed, but you can't. You cannot even build a masjid with the money of the zakah, because it's not one of the categories of the people of the zakah. So this is the right of the poor, or the 8 categories, this is their rights.
But some people say there's a category called for the sake of Allah.
No.
Fi sabilillah, right?
No.
So some people say this is extended, it's open. Anything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would fall under this category.
Right. Fi sabilillah, as it's mentioned in the verse, it means fighting for the sake of Allah. Some of the ulama, the later ulama, they said anything that would serve the purpose of jihad, like calling for the people to the religion of Islam in a direct way. The money can help in a direct way to call people to the religion of Islam, then the zakah can be used in that regard now.
Jazakallah khair. Brother Arshan from India, Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
How you doing, brother?
Hello?
Yes, Brother Arshan, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Ramadan Kareem.
Ramadan Mubarak, akhi.
I had a question to Sheikh Rizal.
Please.
Sheikh, I wanted to ask whether tunes are haram or not.
Can you, Brother Arshan, can you repeat the question? The line is cutting off just a bit.
I wanted to ask whether cartoons are haram or not.
Is what haram or not?
cartoons, the Tom and Jerry and etc.
Fortunately, I wasn't able to get it. Were you able to get that? Okay, Brother Arshan.
Cartoons, Tom and Jerry.
Cartoons. Okay, I got you. Barakallah feek. Jazakallah khairan, Brother Arshan. Cartoons.
This is an issue where we have to refer back to the ulama. Some things are clearly, for example, it's easy to figure out that this is not permissible. If it has the subject of it is something that is not permissible. If it conveys a wrong message, definitely it's not permissible. If it has music, if it all kinds of things that is haram, then it's not permissible. But if it's only things that passes on good quality of work, it's not harmful. There's no sins involved in it whatsoever. There's no music and so on and so forth. If it's in the form of teaching the children and so on, many of the people of knowledge, they said it's okay, but not to be extensively exposing the children to this. Makes them live in some virtual world. If it's done in a modest way, and it has a value and a meaning to it, mashallah, this can be a benefit to the children, but not to be too much. The whole day they're just watching cartoons. And we have to be watchful of the cartoons that comes to us from the Western world, or the ways that people, they have messages there. It's their way of life. I was coming in the plane, and I saw next to me, the mother is making the child watching a cartoon, and it's a famous one, and they're dancing on the beach, the cat and the mouse, the Tom and Jerry thing, dancing on the beach and all kinds of good things like this, right? Which is haram. To us, it's just little, things that has no meanings to it. But some things has to be affected to the children when they see this is something that is permissible. And one of the people of knowledge, one time he said, how come they only wear the clothing on the beach when they're not wearing it when they're not in the beach? Tom and Jerry and things like this. So we have to be careful.
Subhanallah. Jazakallah khairan. Brima from Gambia. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. I can hear myself. Assalamu alaikum. We have a call from England. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
How you doing, sister? Sister, go ahead. I can hear you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
Sheikh, I have a question.
Please.
This is a wealthy man, and he's been blessed with wealth, but there's a big gap between him and his children. Like, his children are going through financial difficulties. Is it obliged upon him to provide for his children, or is it not since they've grown up?
Is this your husband or your former husband?
No, I'm only 14.
14. I'm sorry. Is that you're speaking of a person's father, right?
Yes.
Okay. Barakallah feek. Jazakallah khair. Talking about the obligations of the father for spending on his children.
When it comes to spending, and we're talking about charity, this is an obligatory charity. And this is the most rewardable form of charity when a person spends on those who depend on him, the dependencies, the wife and the children.
Especially if they are in huge need.
Definitely. And it's the warning for a person, do not take this obligation, is the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, "Man mat wa huwa ghashun li ra'iyatihi," whoever dies and he is deceiving his dependencies, he did not spend on them, did not deceive them, did not teach them the religion, whatever form of deception, then he would not even smell the fragrance of Jannah. So this is an obligation, and that's why we have to seek the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When a father is spending on his children, he is getting the most of the rewards when it comes to charity.
SubhanAllah, this reminds me of many incidents where the father and the mother, they get in some sort of an argument or a fight. The dad goes off to live somewhere else for a few days or a few weeks, and he basically leaves the children with no money. He totally forgets about his obligations after he got in a fight or something like that.
And the same thing also when the parents, they get older, it's the obligation of the children to take care of them. I saw something recently, and this was in the Haram in Mecca, a beautiful scene that made people have tears in their eyes. A son, a grown-up one, is taking care of his wheelchair father, and he keep feeding him, and he's crying while he's feeding him, and he keep kissing his head.
SubhanAllah.
And the father wanted to sit on the ground because his leg is hurting, so he carried him on the ground. And while he was doing this, the son he would keep on weeping. It was amazing.
Wow.
And he would keep kissing his head. To see his father in such a state, affected him. And he would keep kissing his head and ask him if he need anything. And the whole time he was doing this, such a beautiful meaning that you see the beauty of the religion of Islam. And this is definitely what we need to have this in our hearts, the father to the children and mother and the children to their mothers and fathers. And this is definitely a great form of giving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I think we're talking about family. I'm about to say welcome to a new episode of Dear Sisters. Jazakallah khair. Let's talk about being smart when spending for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? Some people are, think they want to spend for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They hear the ayat tonight about spending for the sake of Allah. They hear the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they go out on the street and they give anybody that money without verifying if that person is really in need or if that person is not. For example, street beggars. I've heard Sheikh Muhammad Salah on Ask Huda, this was pretty funny. A few days ago, I think someone asked him, I gave money to a person on the street, and instead of that person thanking me, he started cursing me. So he was saying, what's wrong with the situation? He didn't understand. And then Sheikh Salah told him, well, it was probably a street beggar. A person who was just off the street. He's like, these people are professionals.
Right.
They're not really people who are in need.
Right.
So how can we be smart when spending for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
First, to be concerned that this is an act of worship. This is something that you give for you to receive the reward of it in the hereafter. So like any ibadah, we have to be sincere and follow the proper ways to do it and so on. So, but at the same time, it should not hold us back from giving. Because many people, they keep saying, there's no means for me to give, so I won't give anything. Just give. Make sure that this would not stop you from giving for the sake of Allah.
But this idea of just give is what some people use to not be smart. Basically, they say, you know what, I'm just giving. I don't care if that person really needs it or not. It's between me and Allah.
Right. This is not good because you would not invest your money in just anything.
Right.
You won't
As we said, it's called
in,
good business.
Right. This is investment. Right. So you have to make sure that you're putting it in the right place. And the more the charity is needed, the more the rewards are.
SubhanAllah.
So the person has to think and put the effort to make sure that the charity is being done in the proper way. Street beggars, for example, as you said, if it's seen or shown to be something like that, my advice, give something, even if it's something little, right? But don't help the person to be, worse and worse when it comes to begging and so on.
Jazakallah khair. Brother Muhammad from Gambia, assalamu alaikum. MashaAllah.
How you doing?
Quite a few phone calls from Gambia, MashaAllah. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Muhammad.
Alaikum salam, my brother. How you doing?
Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. Doing very well. Barakallah feek.
How is your Ramadan?
Wallah, it's beautiful. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. It's beautiful to have you with us on the program also, inshallah. If I can ask you, Brother Muhammad, to turn the TV down just a bit so I can be able to hear you better, inshallah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brother Muhammad, with your question or comment, inshallah.
Okay, yeah. What an interesting topic you have today. So I got something to contribute on it.
How can you contribute something?
Yeah, because you see, some people, if you give charity for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will reward you. But what I notice in some people, they just give, to get name out of it, and for them to get, be praised.
So basically, spending as a form of show-off, right?
Yeah, spending as a form of show-off.
Okay.
But what I believe is that spending is from the heart. If you have the intention and the strong, the iman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless you with free willing to give someone, to help the poor people, to help the needy. Because God gives you this wealth to help the poor, but not to waste it on something doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
Because what I believe is that if you believe in the hereafter, you will give for the sake of Allah.
Beautiful thoughts, Brother Muhammad. Beautiful.
But if you just say that I'm just giving out for just let me get name or let me be fame out of it, oh my God, you're so lost. Because those who are lost are just lost. But if you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you believe in His Prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, my brother, Allah will guide you in the right path.
Yes. Jazakallah khairan, Brother Muhammad. Barakallah feek. Beautiful reminder, mashallah.
Allah, the religion of Islam, since it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it has a system that would eradicate poverty whatsoever. You know, the zakah system by itself, if it's applied, it's left to the individuals now. And it makes it a very difficult task for the individual to give the zakah. But if the system is implied, you would never find a poor, as it happened at the time of the early generations of Islam. May Allah make it easy, inshallah.
Inshallah. I want to ask you a specific question for Muslims in the West. Okay, do you advise them to keep their zakah local or to send it overseas?
Wallahi, this is a very touchy subject for them, especially lately. They need to do what is more benefiting. Definitely, any need in the local environment, then this has to be taken care of first.
So you say that the local need supersedes the need overseas?
Definitely.
Even if there's a natural disaster somewhere else?
If they can have both taken care of, mashallah, this is great. But the need locally has to be taken care of first before they can go abroad.
So for example,
no.
So to keep things practical, inshallah. A sister in the local community somewhere in the United States, in the United Kingdom, for whatever reason, you know, she's homeless. Okay, and we need to provide shelter for her. She's a poor person. She's a needy person. It's been verified by the leaders of the local masjid. What you're saying is that's helping that sister supersedes, for example, a natural disaster that happened in some part of the world.
Right. If it's either or, definitely the local has to be taken care of first. Because this is the purpose of zakah, and always the ulama, they talk about this. But in most cases, you can do both, right? And it won't basically deprive one from the other. And the Muslim ummah as an ummah is one ummah, right? Whether it's further away or closer, whatever. But we have to make sure that we take care of our localities first, you know. And in the month of Ramadan, and especially for the Muslims in the West, some of them, they kind of feel, you know, when people keep on asking them to give charity in the masajid, you know, they don't see that, for example, in the Muslim world. This is a great opportunity for them. You are living in an environment when you don't have many of the means to do good deed. So you should be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you have means, gates open for you to give from the wealth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provided for you. So you should not be sad, you should be happy actually that you are being called to give. And every time you are being called to give, definitely if it's a good cause, do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would replace it by something better, especially the needs there and everywhere, all over the world we are in so much need, definitely.
Barakallah feek. I believe Brother Arshan from India is back with us. Brother Arshan, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Go ahead, brother.
Sheikh, I wanted to ask another question on charity actually, on the topic itself. So, actually there are many Christians in the area, in India, in many other parts of the world where, hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead. Many Christians in India.
Many Christians in India and many other parts of the world where the mafias and etc., they all give the charity to the church, and the church contributes and give it to the charity organizations, associations, etc. And they use it for the poor people in Africa, etc. Is it allowed in Islam, anything like that? Because those mafias and those church people and the normal Christians, they say that it is allowed because it is not their right. The rich people, it is not their right because they took all that money from the poor themselves, and it is the right of the poor to take all the money. So they were like, they had this. Is it right or not what those Christian mafias do?
Okay, Jazakallah khairan. Basically, I believe what he's saying is that people are giving money to the churches, and the churches are, sending them to organizations that are distributing them in different parts of the world, in Africa and things like that. So he's wondering, I guess, for them if that's okay.
Well, life, for them, it's they do whatever they do for them. As far as for us, for example, anything that is helpful to others. Of course, for them, they would do that, serving their religion and their way of life. And for us as Muslims, we have to be careful so that the person is being saved with matters of belief, so that a poor Muslim is not affected by some form of wealth and charity that comes to him and comes in the form of helping, but then, underneath his is a call for him to renegade from the deen of Islam. That's why the Muslims, they need to do the effort in the poor countries, the poor Muslim countries, to save the Muslims from such a great form of pressure on them, using their poverty to change their religion. And that's definitely a very evil way to use the need of the people. Islam talks to the intellectual abilities of the people. We call people to the deen of Islam based on matters of belief, and things are clear and open and so on. And this is how definitely we help those who are in need, definitely, and there's the mu'allafa qulubuhum in the religion of Islam, but not to be either or, right? And it becomes a condition for the person. We help anybody. It doesn't have to be a Muslim, and we do not tell them, if you become a Muslim I help you, if you don't then I won't help you. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Fi kulli kabidin ratba sadaqa." Anything that has a liver, right, and you help it, it's a charity.
SubhanAllah, we can save a person's, that could be one of the other intentions that we can take in spending for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, especially in the poor African countries and other parts of the world, of course, where we're making the niyyah that inshallah we're being a cause for saving that person's deen.
Right.
From avoiding that person from having a fitna in the deen. And the Prophet ﷺ, in his dua, made the relationship with between al-faqr and al-kufr, right? The relationship between being poor, poverty, and being disbelief.
We basically help the shaitan on such people. That's why we need to put the effort, not just with wealth, but also physically. People go there and help the people and give them steadfastness and make them feel that this is one ummah, that they need to have that support and help.
Ameen ya Rabb. Finally, we have just a few seconds. Let's talk, since we have you here and we're talking about the idea of spending for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Zakat al-Fitr, giving it out before Eid al-Fitr comes in, before the end of Ramadan.
Zakat al-Fitr, this is an obligation where the Prophet ﷺ clearly stated in the hadith that he made it an obligation on anybody that has the food of the day to give. Doesn't have to be a rich person. And giving the extra, and that is basically meant to be food, because we're fasting throughout the month, abstaining from food and drink, to give from the same thing that we have depriving ourselves from for the sake of Allah. And it should reach the poor person before the Eid prayer. So that's why if it's given a night or two before the Ramadan is over, for the people to distribute that, for the poor to rejoice in the day of Eid, so they're not in need in the day of Eid. And it's to be given only to the Muslims, and with certain measures that people need to refer to their masajid and to the local masajid. And they can give money to the masjid, for example, but the masjid, the responsibility is to make sure that they would get the food and they would distribute that to the poor. So people have to think of that and the means and the fiqh and the rulings of it, so that they would give them. Maybe this is something that need to be discussed in details, not in a few seconds, inshallah.
Barakallah feek, jazakallah khair. Alhamdulillah, my dear brothers and sisters, I have good news for you that inshallah Sheikh Ibrahim Zidan is going to be with us tomorrow night again, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Today we talked about a subject related to spending that was one of the do's of spending. Tomorrow, inshallah, without giving away the title, we're going to talk about a subject that has to do with the don'ts of spending, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. So I look forward to talking with you about it. Inshallah, jazakallah khairan for taking the time to be with us.
My pleasure.
Barakallah feek. My dear brothers and sisters, I apologize for not being able to take the remainder of your phone calls. Inshallah, please give us a call tomorrow. We ran out of time. Stay with us, inshallah, through our email at steps@huda.tv. We'll see you tomorrow night, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Lord, I am just a simple man, trying hard to understand. Where's my place in your great plan, oh Lord? Lord, I am just a simple man, trying hard to understand. Where's my place in your great plan, oh Lord? Help this man, help this man.